You're listening to Parents You've Got This, the expert guide to parenthood.
The complete guide to pregnancy, birth, baby and parenthood.
This week on the Expert Guide to Parenthood podcast, we're talking all about sleep associations and sleep difficulties in babies. Everyone has been loving our episodes with Infant Sleep Australia, our sleep experts, and they've asked us to bring back our sleep experts to talk about this important topic.
We are so thrilled today to be joined by Dr. Laura Conway from Infant Sleep Australia. Together with Dr. Fallon Cook, they create bespoke sleep solutions for families that really listen to the needs of the parents and the needs of that particular family. They have an amazing program called Sombel. Make sure you check it out. And Laura, thank you so much for coming back today to share your wisdom and expertise with us to get everybody sleeping beautifully. We need our babies sleeping beautifully so we can catch up on some sleep as well.
Definitely.
Let's start today by talking about sleep associations. So what are some common sleep associations?
So sleep associations are things that your baby needs to be present in order to go to sleep. And we generally split them between independent sleep associations and dependent sleep associations. So independent associations are things like being in their cot or the bassinet, being in a swaddle or a sleeping bag, having a dummy, things that are going to be present all night long for your baby. And dependent sleep associations are ones that are dependent on you doing something to help them go off to sleep. And so we see everything, rocking, cuddling, bouncing, feeding, holding, singing, and all of those are associations that your baby knows when they see those things or experience those things, it's now time for sleep.
And it's tough as parents. As you said, there's so many of them. Let's go through them individually, and if you could share your tips and tricks, we'd love that. The first one we'd like to talk about is feeding to sleep. How do you stop that?
Yeah, so if you want to stop feeding to sleep, then one of the things that you could consider doing is adding in some additional sleep associations as your baby is feeding to sleep. So you pop them on the breast or on the bottle, and you also introduce patting and humming or shushing at the same time. After about a week of introducing those new sleep associations, you can then start to unlatch your baby from the bottle or the breast before they have fallen asleep, and then you carry on patting and shushing them to sleep in your arms. You can then more easily use those patting and shushing sleep associations when you put them into the cot or the bassinet.
What about rocking your baby to sleep?
Yeah, similar. So if you're rocking your baby to sleep, and that might be in a rocking chair or standing up and rocking them or doing the figure of 8 rock, then the first thing would be to start to stop rocking them to sleep and just hold them to sleep. And then you get them used to that for a week or so, and then you would start to pop them down into their cot or bassinet and then give them support whilst they're in the cot and the bassinet in order to go off to sleep.
And it's a bit hard. You can sometimes feel that you're swapping one sleep association for another. And I think with the dummy, this can be one. My little one, I still remember him going to sleep with the dummy. It was like the best thing ever. It was like we discovered the dummy and he was like going to sleep. And then he was waking up. So I remember like one point literally like tipping, like I think he had like 10 dummies in the cot in case he like woke up, he could feel around and like put one in, but then he was then starting to like put one in and hold a dummy, so like we were needing like copious amounts of dummies, and I was like, right, it's time, we've got to just get rid of this dummy for sleep. What do you do when your child has a dummy association?
Yeah, so dummies can be absolutely awesome, and some babies really need to suck a dummy in order to soothe themselves off to sleep. The problem comes when they cannot find the dummy if they lose it overnight. Now, it's not going to be until they're around 7 months or older that they're able to find their dummy overnight. So if you do have a baby that loves their dummy, unfortunately for that period of time before they can replace it themselves, you may need to go back in to replace it overnight when they wake. As they're getting a little bit older and they're not quite at the point yet that they can replace their dummy, you can do dummy play with them during the day. So when they're bright and happy and having a play on their play mat, pop a couple of dummies around them as they lie there and have a really fun game of can you find the dummy, and help them reach for the dummy.
Such a good thing.
And help them reach for the dummy, and then rather than taking the dummy and putting it in their mouth for them, you take their hand and you help them move their hand over and put the dummy in their mouth. And as they get a bit older, it can be really fun. Who's going to find the dummy first? If they've got an older brother or sister, it can be lots of fun. And what we're doing then is helping them learn how to do it when they're bright and energetic. So then when they're in their cot overnight, they can actually do it when they're more sleepy.
Yeah, and how do you get rid of it once it gets to the point where I was like tipping a bucket of dummies in? Like, what do you do if you need to like get rid of it? What do you do?
Yeah, so generally we suggest holding on to the dummy. If your child has reached 6 months of age and they love their dummy, then just keep it for the time being. There's no rush to get rid of it unless your child is having chronic ear infections when you may want to get rid of it. So once your baby is closer to toddlerhood, that's when I would be thinking about getting rid of it if they're already really attached to it, because that's what happens after about 6 months of age. They just love their dummy.
Yes.
And sucking is a nice way for them to soothe themselves. So once they're in toddlerhood, then it would be a case of there's some lovely books that you can read with your toddler to prepare them for the time that the dummy is going to go. And you can talk about, for example, the dummy fairy coming to collect the dummies. And you'd pick a particular day. You find all the dummies in the house to make sure that you've got them all from down the back of the sofa and underneath the cot. Put them in a little basket and put it by the front door. And your toddler can say bye-bye to the dummies, and they go to bed, and in the night the dummy fairy comes and replaces that basket of dummies with a soft toy or a new sippy cup or something that's related to bedtime. And when your toddler comes to the sitting room or whatever, the front door the next day, they see this gift from the dummy fairy. Very important to then not to reintroduce the dummy. The dummy is gone, and lots of praise for your toddler for having given up their dummies. They're a big kid now.
The fairies took mine away, but I didn't get a toy.
Oh.
So I'm a little bit resentful.
Yes, you were cheated.
I know, right?
Maybe the fairy had already seen lots of toddlers that night.
Maybe that might have
gifts
been
left.
what it was. Yeah. Now, contact naps are so beautiful, but
Yes.
sometimes we just need our baby to sleep in their cot. How do we break the contact nap cycle?
Yeah, I should say for all of the discussions around sleep associations and how your baby is going to sleep, in the first 3 months, there's how your baby goes to sleep, as long as you're following safe sleep guidelines, isn't really a big problem. And for many parents, even after that point, they're still very happy to feed their baby to sleep and to use those sleep associations that their baby needs. And similarly for contact naps. Some parents just absolutely love contact naps, even after the first 3 months have passed. But if you are exhausted, and it's absolutely appropriate to then help support your baby to go to sleep in a different place rather than on you. So the first thing to do would be to think about, if you're doing like 3 naps a day and they're all contact naps, just having picking one of the naps where your baby generally settles a bit easier on you, more quickly. So that's often the first nap of the day. Mm-hmm. So then you would pick that nap where you would get your baby as drowsy as possible on you, but before they go to sleep, then pop them down into the bassinet or cot. Oftentimes, babies surprise us. And we think they're never going to go to sleep in their bassinet. But when we pick a nap where they're actually quite likely to go to sleep quite quickly, and you pop them down in their cot or bassinet for that nap, maybe just your hand on them, just giving them a few pats and shushing. They can still smell you, feel you, hear you. Then they go off to sleep in their cot or bassinet. And even if they don't, you can just try for maybe 5 or 10 minutes. And then if they're not going off to sleep, then you just give them a cuddle again and let them go to sleep on you. And you try again next time. It's all about giving them the experience of feeling that, oh, okay, and this isn't quite as comfortable as being on mum or on dad, but they're still there with me and it's not such a scary place. And all of that experience just starts to build until they begin to feel really confident going to sleep in their cot or bassinet.
Yeah, and I think often they do need their parents there, don't they, when they're really little, because they're so used to being inside in this warm, cosy comfort, hearing your heartbeat, feeling, as they're moving in around you. But what happens as they're starting to get a little bit older, and then they still need the parent? Like, I remember one of mine needed to have their hand on my face so they could feel the breath, like going onto their hand. Yes. Another one, I was like, had my hand in the cot, like asleep like this into the cot. So how do you break those sorts of habits where you might not be very comfortable, get a dead arm, or you know, like you don't really want your nose in the cot overnight.
Oh my goodness. There's nothing we haven't heard. In the clinic, we see families coming in with sore backs and RSI and sore shoulders because of these positions they're having to contort themselves into to support their child in the cot. So if you want to go really gently and slowly, and there's no need to do really harsh approaches at all, you can simply start to add in a few breaks when you are using that way of settling them in the cot. So say in your example where your child wanted to hold your face, then you might have just, you have to prepare yourself. You would just put a tissue in your pocket at bedtime. And so they're in the cot holding your face, and then you would just move away quickly and just blow your nose and pop the tissue back in your pocket and then go back again.
Oh, where were you? My husband and I, we still talk about, remember we had to put our nose there, we like joked about getting a mannequin, it was worth it so he could put his hand on the nose, but then we're like, how's the mannequin going to breathe?
And so it's it's not a quick fix. It takes you're looking at about a week or two, sometimes 3, depending on how how committed they are to this.
That's right, the little hand just kept coming out. I'm like, Harvey!
So you'd be so I've got an image in my head. So it would be just rubbing your nose and then putting your face back, and then wait another minute and then just do it again. Over a week or so, you just start to increase the length of time that your face or your hand is away from your baby before you put it back. And what starts to happen is that they're so confident that you're going to put your face back again or your hand back again, that they start to feel confident going off to sleep. They just drift off to sleep whilst your face is away from them or your hand is away from them. So we just go very, very slowly, just increasing their confidence, of seeing that they can go to sleep without touching your face or holding your hand.
What about if your baby wants you to lie on the floor next to them? How do you break that?
Yes. So if your baby wants you to lie on the floor next to them, the first step would be, ultimately what we want you to be able to do is pop them down and then be able to leave the room. And so the first step would be just to put a chair in beside the cot rather than lying down, so that you can then do these next steps more easily. So you can pop the chair beside them and stay with them for a couple of nights as they get used to you being on the chair rather than lying there as they go off to sleep. And then what you would do is you can move the chair a bit further away from the cot over a few nights, and then you can start to get up off the chair and leave the room briefly and come back and sit there until they're asleep. And the trick is only to leave the once, but every night you just leave for a little bit longer. And if they're calling out for you whilst you're out of the room, you come back straight away, reassure them, sit on the chair until they're asleep, and the next night you just leave for a little bit less than you left the previous night. So we're just slowly increasing the length of time that you're out of the room for, again, until they're confident that you're just about to come back, in the same way that they're confident that you're about to put your face back at the top. And they just start to fall asleep whilst that's happening. And then you'll be at the point where you'll be able to pop them down in their cot, sit on the chair briefly, and then leave the room as they go off to sleep.
What about babies that have to be on the move? You know, like constantly you're pushing them around in the pram, and the moment the wheels stop, their little eyes blink open, or like you're driving the car to get them to go to sleep, and then you've got to at some point get out of the car so you can go to bed. Like, what are your tips with movement and sleep association?
So some babies have that strong sleep association with movement, and the first thing I'd be looking at is ensuring that you haven't fallen into the situation where you're popping them into the cot or the pram, because that's the only way they will go off to sleep. And that may be that it may be that when you have been putting them down into their cot, they haven't been able to go off to sleep because their sleep pressure hasn't been quite high enough, so their sleep needs may have changed during the day, and so you have been trying to still get them to have their nap at those times, and you've been putting them in the car or the pram so that they have the nap at that time, might actually be that they're ready to drop a nap, and they might go back to sleeping in their cot once again when they have gone from having 4 naps down to 3 naps, or 3 naps down to 2 naps, for example. If you're confident that the naps are fine, then really it's a case of, similar to what I answered before around how to stop contact napping, would be pick one nap that you're going to tackle, and it might be that morning nap, because that's often the one where babies settle more quickly for. And rather than giving them that nap in the car or the pram, helping them, just rocking them until they're very sleepy in your arms, and then popping them down in the cot and trying to pat them off to sleep, and giving them their later naps still in the car or the pram, and then just slowly seeing those skills generalize from the morning nap to later on in the day.
And it's game changing. I still remember, like, my first daughter, sorry, Hopi, but, you make all the mistakes with the first one. And I was just roaming the streets with her, like, in her pram. And I remember, like, going to mother's group, and they were saying that they put their babies to sleep in their beds. And I was like, what? Like, you mean you've got a whole hour?
Yes.
Like, where you're sitting, and it can be really life changing if you can persist through changing that sleep association.
Yeah, and it always does take persistence. So that's a really good word. So when we're changing something about where our baby goes to sleep or how they go to sleep, it's totally new to them. And it may feel a little bit overwhelming or feel very different for them. And they may express their surprise or dislike by crying, because that's their main way of communicating. And so as parents, it's really important to, if you want to make this change, to persist and know that that crying isn't because you're doing anything wrong. It's that this is something entirely new for your baby, and your baby's crying is like a question, am I okay? And if you stay really calm as you're patting them off to sleep, or gently rocking them in their cot and shushing or humming, that your answer is you're fine. Can you see I'm fine? If your answer is, quick, put them back in the pram and do anything else to get them to sleep, your answer is you were right.
Yeah.
You were not okay.
Yeah. That's right.
Yeah.
And you have to be in the cot to go to sleep. We'll be roaming around the neighbourhood for another.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
trying to stay consistent and calm and persist, and know that they're protesting when you're changing something about how they go to sleep is normal behaviour. But you're not doing anything wrong.
Let's talk about some of the common sleep difficulties that you see people with little babies experiencing.
So the most common sleep difficulties we see are settling difficulties, so babies that need those sleep associations that are dependent on their parent to go off to sleep. And sometimes settling can take a really long time. Parents are trying for half an hour to an hour to settle their babies for their naps or at the start of the night. Some babies wake frequently overnight when they don't need a feed or a change of their nappy, and they're waking up every sleep cycle. Other babies will start the day super early in the morning, and others will have the long periods awake overnight.
You've talked a lot today about sleep associations and sleep difficulties, and as a parent it can be hard to know, what's what. But I think, if you're having sleep issues with your family, you just need to get some help, and someone like you are so great at helping parents know what the problem is and how to fix it. But sometimes there's a negative connotations around sleep training. How do you like to phrase helping families?
Yeah, it's interesting how polarising the issue of addressing poor sleep in babies and toddlers can be. What we know is that good sleep is one of the pillars of health, along with diet and exercise. And if one of those 3 pillars is a little bit off kilter, it can really begin to impact well-being. So if you have encountered sleep difficulties like I've described, so frequent waking overnight, needing lots of support to go to sleep, running hot at night, then and those difficulties have persisted for a few weeks, and it's really impacting your child's behaviour and your family functioning, it's absolutely fine and appropriate to seek help with that sleep. The first thing would be to check that there isn't a medical problem causing your baby's sleep problems, so speaking to your doctor or nurse about the sleep issues. And then the next thing is to consider that no one's going to force you to do sleep training. It may be that the only thing that you need help with is understanding your baby's unique sleep needs. They may have a lower sleep need than is seen in the typical or average baby that age. And if you are looking to give your baby more naps than they actually need or longer sleep overnight than they actually need, they will be waking more frequently overnight or taking a long time to go to sleep. So it might be that all you need to do is tweak the number of naps that they're having during the day, the duration of those naps, or what time they go to sleep at night. And then you might find that their sleep health then improves, they begin to sleep for longer stretches, and it's not so hard to get them to sleep at the start of the night. If, however, your baby does have really strong sleep associations that are leading to them waking up frequently overnight, then it's really appropriate to try some behavioural interventions. And there's a range of sleep interventions available, from some really gentle, gradual approaches that will take a number of weeks to quicker approaches where you can still stay present with your baby and support them in their new sleep space. So if you do want to explore those options to improve settling, then seeking out support through a health professional who specialises in sleep is an absolutely responsible parenting act to take.
Thank you so much, Laura, for sharing your wisdom with us today. Please, everybody listening, do check out Infant Sleep Australia and their Sonbell program. It is absolutely amazing and life-changing for so many. So don't hold back, parents. We don't need to struggle. We're not alone. Lean on each other and seek support, because sleep is just so, so important. So thank you very much, Laura, for being with us today, and to you and Fallon for being our sleep experts. We're very grateful.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Thank you.
You've been listening to the Expert Guide to Parenthood podcast. Never forget, parents,
You've got this.
Join a Parents You've Got This masterclass today to be prepared, excited and educated for pregnancy, birth, baby and parenthood. Visit www.parentsyou'vegotthis.com.au and sign up for a masterclass today.